Good morning. Well, today we are going to continue this series we started last week about virtue. And I want to kick us off real quick with something David wrote in Psalm 15. He started off by asking God some questions, and he asked, "Who may worship in your sanctuary, Lord? Who may enter your presence on your holy hill?" So in other words, who may dwell with you, God? Who can experience your presence, your goodness, and your peace? And then he continues and says, "Those who lead blameless lives and do what is right, speaking the truth from sincere hearts, those who refuse to gossip or harm their neighbors or speak evil of their friends, those who despise flagrant sinners and honor the faithful followers of the Lord and keep their promises even when it hurts, those who lend money without charging interest and who cannot be bribed to lie about the innocent, such people will stand firm forever." David is describing people with integrity. Those who live and walk with integrity. So if you're looking for some heartwarming stories online, particularly about integrity, you'll probably come across articles that talk about somebody so-and-so found a wallet and returned it to their owner with all the money in it or whatever. The other day I was looking at stories like that, and I came across several where people would return a wallet to its rightful owner and be full of the money and blah, 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 right? And in all of these stories, the people that wrote the stories, the people that are talking about it, all seemed surprised, shocked that, can you believe this guy returned this wallet with all this money in it? To me, that says a lot about the world that we live in, that people are more surprised and shocked when somebody has integrity to return a wallet full of money or whatever, than they are toward people that have a lack of it. Integrity is not something that is really celebrated today. It's not really something that is really taught a lot. It seems like almost every other day there's another news story about a politician who's doing this or that. It's not with no integrity, or a celebrity or a leader who fails and messes up. Even friends and family who don't live up to beliefs they speak of, that they claim their lives don't reflect their beliefs. So today we're talking about integrity. Before we jump in, though, let's take a moment to give our hearts to God and pray real quick. God, thank you so very much for loving us, even though we mess up and even though we don't always reflect your values. God, as we continue this study about values, I pray that you would just open our hearts and speak a powerful message to us this morning about integrity. In Jesus' name. So before we look at what integrity is, you might initially, one of the things that comes up in my head and when I think about integrity is, maybe it's because I watch too many movies, is the integrity of a boat or a ship. You don't want to lose the integrity of a ship or it's going to sink. What is integrity? So before we answer that though, what is integrity not? It's important to grasp that one of the things that integrity is not is perfection. Having integrity doesn't mean that you're never going to mess up. If it did mean that, then Jesus would be the only person to have ever had integrity, right? But a better way to think of integrity, especially if you kind of consider the way that you word it when talking about a ship or something, a better way to view it is as if it was an integrated life, where your life and your values all are one or whole, not broken apart. So, in fact, the word integrity, it actually comes from a Latin word, integer. I don't know how you say it, but that word, which means untouched, undivided, and whole. Integer, that's a word that we use in mathematics, right? Often what we tend to do is compartmentalize our life, like a pie. We may say, okay, well, this part of my life, that is my work life, and I need to be this person at work. And then this part is my home life. I need to do this. I need to be this person at home with my family. And then this part is another area, my church life. And then, on and on and on, we compartmentalize and maybe even act like completely different people at each areas in our life. And then this area over here, that's my private life. Nobody can know about this one, right? It's probably the pumpkin part, because that's gross. All right. So integrity, though, what it is when your beliefs and your values are not divided. When your beliefs and your values all are one to help make your life a complete whole, and your beliefs and your values all are stirred in with all aspects of your life. There's no compartmentalization. So rather than being divided like that, your life and your values are one, they're complete, they're whole, and they don't change depending on the condition or the climate of your environment. So a short way to say it is integrity is when your behavior matches your beliefs. Often we compartmentalize like the pie because we want to be given favor in some specific area or with specific people. So you want a customer to like you, so you do this thing they'll like, or you be this person you think they'll like. You want to have a great relationship with your coworkers, so you imitate them or whatever instead of imitating Christ. What's interesting about that is how much it actually creates more stress in your own life to compartmentalize like that and to be different people. It can create stress in your life. Proverbs gives us some really good imagery about this, about the imagery for comparing a life with integrity and a life without. It says, whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. So if you think about that is stressful. If you're always walking around trying not to be found out, for example. When you give in and you do things differently at work or with a specific group of people or friends, it's amazing how much stress that can create in your mind and your heart. On the other hand, how many times have you laid in bed at night worrying that somebody would find out that you have integrity? That your values at work are the same as your values at home, right? People who walk in integrity walk securely. There's no fear as you walk down life's paths. So integrity is when your private life is consistent with your public life. Who are you when nobody's looking, right? If there are two different yous, then you may be more concerned with your reputation than integrity, and reputation and integrity are not the same. Reputation is who others think you are, while integrity is who you really are. So chasing reputation will often lead down those crooked paths that Proverbs talked about. And it'll cause you to live a life that's completely opposed to the integrity that God desires in your life. In fact, we have a word to describe the opposite of integrity, and it is the word hypocrite. A hypocrite is someone whose life doesn't line up with their beliefs, right? Jesus made it clear how important integrity is to God in that, and the way that he responded to hypocrites. In fact, it's so important to God that much of Jesus' scriptural life, what we read about, is him confronting hypocrites, right? And so he was much, much harder on hypocritical people than he was prostitutes, for example, and other sinners. He often got into it with religious leaders when he would be teaching for being hypocritical. He even told in one specific passage, we're going to read part of it here in a second, he told the crowd of people following him that they should practice what these people are teaching, but they should definitely not follow their example. And because they don't even practice what they preach. They're hypocrites. They lack integrity. And Jesus, he used a lot of imagery to teach. And I like this passage that we're going to talk about. And in this particular passage, he points out how hypocritical the Pharisees are. And he uses an analogy of eating gnats and camels, which sounds weird on its face, but he is specifically referring to Mosaic law, because both of those things were, you can't eat gnats and camels, right? And so this is what he said. He calls them out. He says, blind guides, you strain your water so you won't accidentally swallow a gnat, keep from accidentally messing up, but you swallow a camel. What sorrow awaits you, teachers of religious law and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you're filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first wash the inside of the cup and the dish, and then the outside will become clean too. It's not what you show on the outside that matters. It's not about trying to have a good reputation. It doesn't matter how hard you work to strain out all these little things in your life, the gnats or whatever, or how hard you try to never miss a church meeting, or you how much good you want people to see that you do, or anything like that. It's what's on the inside that matters. Focus on the inside, your integrity, and then your reputation will follow. When you allow Jesus to transform you from the inside, then all of the other stuff just happens, right? So rather than working from a stance of appearance, seem to be good or whatever, your reputation, your integrity will create a solid reputation. When we focus on the inside, we don't cut corners. We don't, because cutting corners, what it does is we cut corners to save our reputation. All that ends up happening is we end up creating a bad reputation. There's a story of a builder. He was a very well-known, highly sought-after builder of homes. And he worked for this massive company, and he built some of the most amazing and beautiful houses. And he had been doing this for about 35 years. And he's really starting to get excited about retirement. He wants to spend more time with his grandkids and that kind of thing. So he decides that after his 40th year, he's retiring, and he makes sure everybody knows it. He tells them, and every year he kind of makes a big deal about it. I've only got 5 years left. Hey, I've got 4 years left, and he's excited, counting down the years. 3, 2, 1, 10 months left, 6 months left. 2 months, I'm out of here, guys. And finally the day comes, and he's ready to go, and his boss says, hey, hang on a second. If you could just do one more house for us, I would really, really appreciate it. It would mean the world to me. And he said, I've been announcing my retirement for these last 5 years. Everybody knows how much I'm ready to quit. I don't want to do that. And his boss just keeps begging him, please, just one more house, and then you can go. So he finally gives in, and he decides to do one more house. And he was known for being the best. He was normally the top house builder, blah, blah, blah. He was the best. But now he's so ready to go that he starts finding himself cutting corners he normally wouldn't have cut. He starts hiring cheap contractors because they'll get there faster or whatever. He starts putting cheaper stuff in the house and cutting corners. And at the end of the project, the owner of the building says, man, with this big smile on his face, we're so glad that you stuck around for this one more house. He says, we have a gift we want to give, a present. We're so excited that you worked for us. You worked so hard for us all these years. We want you to have this house. Here's the keys to your new home. And that builder realized what we all are going to realize someday and that is, you're building your own house. You're building your own home. Every decision you make, every move you make, every corner you cut, every time you decide how you're going to live or what you're going to say or what you're going to do, you're building your own home. Whether you do what's right or you cut corners, whether you show grace or you judge harshly, whether you tell the truth or you bend it to benefit you in some way, whether you show honor like we talked about last week or dishonor, you're building your own home. And integrity really does matter. And when you step back and take a look at the house that you're building, what does your actions say how important integrity is to you? What, in other words, is your integrity worth? What would you do if you had an opportunity to get a great job? This is your dream job. You just need your resume to look great. What are you going to do building this house? Are you willing to lie on the resume? You want someone to like you or connect with you in some way or reconnect with you if it's a rough relationship. What is your integrity worth? Are you willing to exaggerate a story to be liked? Are you ready to bend the truth a little, to make a story up completely? You see a window in the expense report. There's a little bit of room for you to have a little bit of money here. What is your integrity worth? Where are you willing to cut corners in your own life? Remember that you're building your own house. Pastor Craig Groeschel, that's where we went to church, and he talked a lot about his glory days, which were tennis. He played tennis in high school and college. And one of the stories he shared is one time they were going to a championship. I don't even remember what town it was in, but it was a championship tournament, and they were having to stay in a motel. And on one day before returning to the motel, they all went and played putt-putt before they went back to the room. And you know how putt-putt courses work. You play all the holes, and then you get to the last one, you put your ball into the last hole, or it falls into the trough because you missed whatever, you didn't get the free game. And then the ball disappears, it goes to Narnia or whatever. and they got on that hole, and his friend ran up and put his foot in front of the cup, and so the ball it bounced off his foot and came back to him. And so rather than turning the ball in, he just held on to it and went back to the room. And while he's sitting in the room that night, he was just tossing the ball up and down and catching it while he's sitting on the bed or whatever. And at some point, his coach came into the room and caught the ball out of midair and asked him, where'd you get this ball? And he told him, well, putt-putt, And his coach's response was, you're off the team. I don't let thieves play on the team. You're gone. You can't play tomorrow. And it devastated Craig. And so he started begging, what can I do to stay on the team? And so the coach told him, there's one thing you can do. He said, you can go back to the putt-putt place and tell them, you used to be a thief, but you're not a thief anymore. You stole this ball, and you want to take it back to them, and you can ask them for forgiveness. He said, because, I don't let thieves on my team, because today it's a golf ball. Tomorrow, a car stereo. And then after that, it might be something bigger. So Craig, he went back to the putt-putt course, and he gave him the ball, and he told him he used to be a thief, and he asked him to forgive him. And on the way back to the room, he said the ride back to the room was silent, except at one point the coach made one remark to him. He said, if you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. A few years later, Craig is teaching kids how to play tennis at a tennis camp. And on the last day, he played a match with all the kids to 10. And to keep things interesting, he told them if any of them beat him, then he would give them his racket. And he had this expensive racket that he played in college. He thought he was really great and everything. So he had this expensive racket, and he told him, if you beat me, I'll give you my racket. And so to keep it even more interesting, what he would do is he would let the score get to 8-all, and then he would just get his last 2 points and knock him out real quick. Well, that was working great until this one kid who he said could barely hit the ball to begin with. He gets up there and he hits the ball, and it hits the top of the net. And if you've ever played tennis, you know what happens when the ball just hits the net perfectly. It hits the net, and then it rolls off, and there's nothing about it. And it did that. It rolled down onto Craig's side, and now it's 9-8. So he's thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to have to just go ahead and hurry up and put this thing out before it gets any closer, or whatever. And then the luck of luck, the kid does the exact same thing with the very next serve. And the ball and rolls over, and the kid wins. And all the other kids just erupt. You have to give him your racket. You have to give him your racket. And there he is. Does he keep his word? If you have integrity, nothing else matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. There's a very powerful prayer in Psalm that can be very difficult to pray if you're really legitimately seeking God in this. And I want to challenge all of us to pray this prayer next time you spend time with God in this way. And it goes like this: Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. Search me and know my heart. Is there anything that is compartmentalized, that is not integrated with your values, and separated from the values that you've called me to live by? The heart, we know, is deceitful above all things. Show me where my heart is hypocritical. There are areas that I would encourage you to specifically examine if this is a struggle. You know, where are you the most defensive? What do you not want others to know? You know, what do you criticize in others the most? For me, I'm often most defensive where I'm the most vulnerable, right? And I don't know if that's the way for everybody, but it's sure the way for me. I get defensive about things I'm trying to protect. You know, I'm trying to protect that weak part of me. Maybe I'm even defensive because I don't want you to know about that being my weakness. I've even found that I tend to be extra critical about specific things that are my weakness. You know, I tend to be extra critical about mistakes people make if I feel weak in that area. So where in your life have you cut corners, or where do you feel defensive and weak? You know, where do you struggle? When have you been more concerned with your reputation than integrity? It can be difficult to stay the course of integrity when you don't know what the outcome's going to be. You don't know what people is going to think about you if they find out. And the thing of it is you may never know. You may never know. But integrity is far more important than making something happen the way that you want it to. Back to the story with Craig. He could have held on to that tennis racket, but he knew that when you have integrity, nothing else matters. And when you don't, nothing else matters. So years later, one Sunday, after he was preaching, a young man walked up to him just bawling. He was a mess. And he said, the guy was a wreck. He said that he told Craig that his wife had just left him and his life was falling apart and he didn't know what to do. But he came to church and he prayed the prayer at the end of the service that Craig led. And he said, "Thanks, Coach." And Craig looked at him a little bit confused and he said, and the guy said, "I was there that day that you gave that other kid the tennis racket. He said, nobody thought you would actually do that, but you did. And when my life was falling apart, I started thinking about what preachers I knew, and I knew you. And I figured if you'd tell the truth then, you'd tell the truth now." It may be difficult, but integrity really matters. It's really important. So when it gets difficult and you don't know what the outcome might be, just remember to trust God with the outcome. Just do what's right and trust God with the results. Because your integrity is far easier to keep than it is to recover. The Bible has a lot to say about integrity. But I want to leave you with one final thought. Integrity, it's either going to make you or break you, according to Proverbs. Either your integrity will guide you, and God will bless you for living a life in that passage that we talked about earlier, where Jesus said, he called the more important aspects of the law justice, mercy, and faith. Or you will be like the people he was talking to, the hypocrites, the Pharisees, a thief, someone who cuts corners. Without integrity, your paths will be crooked, and you may start with just a little bit of bend and think, oh, this isn't so bad, but at some point you'll turn back, you'll look back on the house you just built, and you'll see that the whole thing ended up being crooked. And at that point, you may be looking down your life's path from the perspective of destruction. And this is what Proverbs warns us. It says, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them." So if you have integrity, nothing else really matters. If you don't have integrity, nothing else matters. So let's pray this morning. God, thank you so much for loving us. Even though we don't naturally live up to this, even though integrity is shocking and surprising to us. God, thank you for loving us anyway and challenging us and encouraging us to be integrated with your values. God, I pray that you would search our hearts. God, that you would test us, know our thoughts, point anything out in us that offends you. God, I pray that you would lead us on your integrated path. God, that we would be integrated with you and your values. Thank you so much for loving us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.